Hi everyone, welcome to the Cool Library. I talk about books, I talk about movies, but mainly books. And now that I'm officially out of a reading slump, oh my god, it feels so amazing to be out of a reading slump. I want to go back to doing some reading vlogs. And so this is one I've had this idea for quite a while now. I've been wanting to do it, and I think right now is the perfect time to do it. Also, don't mind me doing or folding my laundry. It's called multitasking, and I need to do it because there's never enough hours in the day to do everything I need to do. So that's just how this intro is going to go. Now, Silvia Moreno-Garcia. She's an author. You probably know her, or maybe you don't. Who knows? But I have it in my head that she's going to be a favorite author, that I'm going to love her. I have read 3 of her stuff already. I've read a book that I didn't really like. I gave it 2 stars. I also read a book that I thought was just okay, and I gave it 3 stars. And then I also have a book that I really liked that I gave 4 stars. But I still haven't found my 5-star Silvia Moreno-Garcia book, and I am convinced that there is one out there. And so that's what this video is essentially going to be. Oh my god, can you do what I want you to do? I have all of her other books that I haven't read yet, and I'm going to read them, but now is the perfect time to do this vlog because she's coming out with a book this month. It's coming out in 3 weeks, and I am actually quite excited for it, so I'm going to save that one for last. So here are the books that I have. Obviously, I'm going to read Silver Nitrate, which is the new one coming out that I'm going to save for last. Then I also have The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, which I think is like a historical fiction horror, maybe? I'm not quite sure actually what that one is. And then we also have Untamed Shore, which I just know to be a thriller that I think takes place in Mexico City. Or maybe not. Oh, it takes place in Hollywood? Then we also have The Beautiful Ones, which I know is a weird fantasy. That's what people have been saying, that it's weird. Again, I don't really know much about any of these books. And then lastly, Gods of Jade and Shadow, which I do know is a fantasy based off of Mayan mythology. I believe one of these books is going to be a 5 stars. Let's get on this journey and find out together. Now, I think the first one that I'm going to start with is going to be Untamed Shore, just because I'm in such a thriller mood right now. I just finished reading a thriller and I loved it, and I want more. I want more thrillers, and I think this one's going to be perfect. I also have an audiobook for this one, so that should hopefully mean I get through this very quickly. We'll see. Okay guys, I'm now about 100 pages into this book. I'm not quite sure what to think about it just yet. There's a lot of exposition, a lot of, I guess, getting to know characters, and finally, right at the end of, what page is this? 107. We finally got what this book, I guess, is about. We got to the murder part, but I'm also confused because we've also already solved it. So I'm assuming something else has to go on. I'm a little confused by this book right now, but that's just my update for you. It's a little boring. Also, it does not take place in California. It takes place in Baja California, which I have learned is a section of Mexico. I'm also not quite sure what the shark thing is gonna come into play. They keep talking about the fishers in this small town and how, oh, I should probably explain what the book is about. Oh my god, I haven't done that. But let me just, honestly, let me continue my thought for a second. But in this small town, there's a ton of fishers, and a lot of these men fish sharks. And they keep mentioning it, and I'm like, how is that going to play into the plot here? I'm not quite sure just yet. But in this, we're following Viridana, which is a hard name to say when I've got a night guard in my mouth that's causing me to lisp. So Viridana, she's lived in this small little community in Baja California her whole life, and she knows a lot of different languages, and so she is hired to be an assistant slash translator for this very wealthy guy who is a very famous author, as well as his wife and his wife's brother. I forget the author's name, but the author's wife is Daisy, and then the brother is Greg. Part of like her job is to also live with them, and just kind of like help out the author mainly, but also help out the other two as well. So there's like a lot of tour guide stuff that she does, but it's also like grocery shopping and things like that. But her and Greg end up kind of having this relationship. I don't even want to call it that. I don't like any of these people, by the way. Greg is a dick. Daisy is a bitch. The old guy is a typical rich white guy. And Viridiana, she's nice and all, but she is just so naive and dumb, and I can't help but just be like, at this point, you're getting yourself in your own mess. You're the one making dumb decisions right now. I'm not going to say who was murdered because it's not in the description, so I don't think you're supposed to know. But after a couple of days of being with these people, one of them has died. We kind of now need to like cover it up. For some reason, I don't know why. Anyway, I'll keep going. Guys, I got a surprise at the bookstore today. I was going in to just buy a couple of books, and I see this book. This isn't out for another 2 weeks, and it's being sold. I was shocked. I was like, is Goodreads wrong? Because Goodreads says it doesn't come out till July 18th. It is 2 weeks before July 18th, and it's being sold in the bookstore? I'm confused. But I picked it up anyway. Okay, guys. I'm at the 200 page mark. So I have a little bit left to go. I thought I was going to finish it tonight, but I am tired. So I'm going to have to finish this hopefully tomorrow. But 200 pages in, I'm still not really feeling it. It feels like a very low stakes thriller. It's not like fast paced, and it's not like super interesting. I feel mean saying that, but it is. It's just I'm bored, if I'm being honest. But I am gonna finish it and continue on with it and just see how this ends, if there's any sort of twist, because it seems like there's no twists. I can see everything coming. Yeah, that's just my small little update, is that nothing is really happening. It feels like nothing is happening in this book. That's what it is. Hello guys. I am so ready for bed because this book kind of put me to sleep. I feel so bad having a book that wasn't a win be the first book of this vlog, but here we are. The story never really picked up from the last time I checked in with you. I couldn't get into the story. I couldn't get into these characters. Like, I really just didn't like any of these characters. And nothing felt thrilling enough for this to be considered a thriller. The things I did like, however, I really liked her descriptions of the scenery and of Baja California. Like, I liked the descriptions of all the things that were going on around our characters. And then I did like the way that things played out in the end. I think it was a good ending for this book. Even though it was a good ending, I still didn't really care. And I'm just honestly kind of happy to be done with this book and ready to move on with the next one, which, by the way, this one I am giving 2 stars. But the next one is going to be the beautiful ones. Let's get into this. So I'm about to head out to do some laundry, but I'm very close to being 100 pages into this book. I'm at 90 pages in, and I don't want to like update you while I'm at the laundromat, so I'm just going to update you right now, my thoughts. I'm really enjoying this one so far. For a while I was like, how is this a fantasy? Because it doesn't feel fantasy. But basically, this is giving me a lot of like Bridgerton vibes, in the sense of like there's balls and there's like promenading in the park and there's like high society and, you know, like courting and whatnot. So this is very much like a romance with some fantasy and historical fiction elements to it. But we have 3 main characters. We have Valerie, Hector, and Nina. Both Nina and Hector have telekinesis, so they can like move objects with their mind. Hector is he's older and more skilled in that Nina is still a bit younger. I think she's 19, and she still is a little out of control with her power. So they're kind of, I guess, like, he's kind of like teaching her how to use her powers, but is also courting her. But the thing is, he is only courting her to make Valerie mad, because him and Valerie used to be engaged 10 years ago. And then she went off and married Gaetan, who is the cousin of Nina. So Nina's been staying with Valerie and Gaetan during this time, and she is very much not like high society. She is not very subtle in her speaking and in her actions, and everyone's just like looking at her like, what a weirdo. But Hector does kind of see something that he likes in Nina and is still going to court her, but it's mainly to make Valerie mad because he's still trying to get Valerie back. Yeah, that's essentially what's going on, I think, as of right now, and I'm really enjoying it. It's quite slow paced, so I'm actually really enjoying the writing style of this, and I'm also really enjoying the story, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm not a huge fan of Hector in the sense of like leading this girl on who is now in love with him, when he mainly wants Valerie, who I honestly don't think he can ever have, because she's married to Gaetan, and Gaetan is like very rich, very big and well known, and you do not want to like piss this man off. So I don't know, but I'm enjoying it. Hi. Before I talk to you about the book, which by the way I've made it to the 200-page mark, I have traveled and I'm in my hotel. So let's do the obligatory hotel tour. So first we have a kitchen. I'm probably never gonna use this kitchen, but I've got it. And then of course like a little sitting area for reading potentially, a desk, TV, a nice big bed, and then we've got a very nice bathroom over here. Yeah, so we've got like the vanity area, bathrobes. That's when you know you feel fancy, when you're wearing a hotel bathrobe. And of course, sink, shower. Oh, also, and I got like, oh my god, a free $25 wine dispensary card, because this hotel has a wine dispensary. So I get $25 worth of wine while I'm here. Also, I'm not going to be staying at this hotel the whole time I'm here, which I'm here for a friend's wedding. But I'm in this hotel for 2 days, and then I'm going to be at the groom's parents' place for 3 days, because they said they had an extra room in their villa, so we'll get to also see that. But back to the book. So yeah, I'm at the like 200-page mark. I'm almost done. Oh my god, can you see? Almost done. I'm still really enjoying this book. I'm not gonna like say what's going on plot-wise because I don't want to spoil things for you. Let me see if I can sit you down somewhere real quick. So yeah, no, I'm really enjoying this book. It honestly, it could be a 5-star. It's either a 4 or 5-star depending on how it ends. But I think last time I said it, like the writing was very beautiful. It's so beautiful. It's like very elegant and it feels high class, which is perfect because, you know, we're following a bunch of people who are rich and high class and high society. Another thing I love about this book is that it really does feel like, I guess, like an episode or a season of Bridgerton. It also feels very Downton Abbey, and those are two of like my favorite TV shows. I'm still not liking Valerie. Like, she is definitely an antagonist. And Hector, again, was not really liking him, but I'm like starting to warm up to Hector. And I know I say like, I don't like a character. It doesn't mean that that makes me not like the book. It's just like the character is meant to be like villainous or like antagonistic towards our main character. And there are times where it works and times where it doesn't, like in Untamed Shore. Like the characters of like Greg and the other people whose names I've already forgotten, they were like villainous and antagonistic, and I did not like reading about them. Like, they were just annoying to read about, but like the ones in here, they're
very interesting and very layered. And they like keep the story and the plot going. And I'm excited to see where it goes. I also just love that like this is like, it's a romance book, it's a fantasy book, but it also is like very subdued in its romance and its fantasy. I don't know, I like it. It's just like, you know, some drama and some love, and then there's like a little sprinkle of fantasy in there. And it's really interesting. Yeah, no, I'm really, really enjoying this book so far. Hopefully I can finish it while I'm here, and I can tell you how I feel about it.
All right, guys. We did it. We have a 5-star. I absolutely loved this one. I have nothing more to add from the stuff that I said before, but I did really enjoy this ending. The way it just kind of like shifted a little bit at the end, in tone a little bit, was very exciting. As soon as like a certain phrase, some words were said by one character, I was obsessed and in it, and I needed to finish it. I love how like I'm on vacation and I'm literally just reading. But it's just like there's not much to do around here except wine tastings, and I did one by myself. It's not that fun by yourself, to be honest. You're just sitting there on your phone while everyone else is around you, like all chatting with each other, and it's just like, I feel so awkward. Anyway, I loved this. It's time to move on to the next book, which is going to be The Daughter of Dr. Moreau. I had an audiobook for this on hold, and it finally is available. So I definitely need to get to it. And hopefully I can finish this by the time I get back home from vacation. I'm realizing now is probably not the best time to film. But I thought, you know what, let's just do it. I haven't started reading yet, but I wanted to at least discuss what I know going into this book before starting, which is essentially nothing. I know it's historical fiction. I know there's some romance in it, maybe some horror, and that it's based off of a classic. Good morning. Hair is a mess. I definitely need a shower. Still on vacation, but in a new room. But I'm about 100 pages into this now. I'm liking it so far. I'm liking it. It was a little difficult getting into it for some reason. I want to say I read the first 2 chapters 3 times until I could eventually understand what was going on. But now I'm like into it. So we are following the daughter of Dr. Moreau, but we also are following Montgomery, who's kind of like the butler of this place. So Dr. Moreau does experiments on people. It hasn't been told to us that if these experiments are consensual between the people he's doing them with. Not quite sure, but basically he's making like hybrids in the sense of like half human, half some type of animal. Most of the animals seem to be like types of cats. But he's doing these kinds of experiments, and one of those experiments is his daughter. I forget what kind of animal she also is, but we have her perspective as well as Montgomery's perspective, and I have a feeling they're going to try and do a romance between Montgomery and Carlotta, his daughter, which I don't know how to feel about it, because she did this with the other book too, the one I read before. And honestly, I feel like all of her books, the romances are always with like a young girl who's like 19, or I think she's 18 in this one, and like an older man, more like in their 40s or 30s. And it's just, I don't know how to feel about it, because like I like the men, I think they're like stand-up guys, but the age difference. This also is taking place in the 1870s in somewhere in Mexico, and like the main conflict that is going on is like Dr. Moreau has been like losing funding, not so much losing funding, but he's in a lot of debt with the guy who is funding his research. So the guy who's funding his research, he has, I think it's a younger brother, and that brother has come into town with like a bunch of his friends, and he's not a good guy. He is, I don't like him at all, and neither does Montgomery. But Carlotta is smitten with him, and her dad thinks that if they get married, they can then get that money, and that will help all their financial problems. So he's basically just like trying to sell his daughter off, which I don't approve, but this is the 1800s, so. But that's pretty much all I've gotten to so far. And like I said, I am liking it. It's just, for some reason, like with this book, I really need to focus. I have to focus harder reading this book to like understand what's going on. And then the other thing too, because it's dual perspective, it goes back and forth between the chapters. Sometimes they start the next chapter a little bit before what happened in the chapter before. Like, okay. So like we'll end the chapter at a certain point, and then we'll go to the next chapter and it's from the other person's point of view. And we'll start like doing that. I'm like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden it'll mention something that happened in the previous chapter, and I'm just like, oh, so this isn't happening after what we left off with in the previous chapter. It's going back, and it's just confusing I guess the timeline a little bit. So I just wish there was like a better way of explaining to us where we are in the story, so I'm not surprised when I reread like the same conversation that I read in the previous chapter. I don't know. But yeah, I'm gonna go downstairs and now get some breakfast. Hi, on my way back home from work, because I am back home now. I've made it a decent way through this book. Yeah, I'm now at part 3, and it's gotten, like, where part 2 ended, it is so juicy. It like has been a kind of like boring, honestly, kind of the way to this end point, but this end point, like, so much drama happened. Yeah, no, so much happened in like the span of one chapter, and I'm like, I wish we could have gotten here sooner. But other than that critique, I'm still enjoying it, and I will just tell you how it is later on when I'm done with it. Okay, so I have finished The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, and I think I'm giving it 3.5 stars. Because, like, the beginning was kind of confusing. The middle was a little boring. But the end really picked up, got action-packed, got super interesting. And then I feel like it also just kind of, like, abruptly ended right before the epilogue. But I'm like, happy with the epilogue. I just wish there had been a little bit more in between that last chapter and the epilogue. So, like, overall, my feelings are just, like, okay about it. I did read the afterword of that book, and the afterword kind of gave the history, like the real story and the real history that this fictional story is based off of, and it was very interesting and kind of helped connect a lot of things that happened within the story. So I definitely recommend reading the afterword. And I think that's all I have to tell you on that book. My next book is going to be Gods of Jade and Shadow. All I know about this is that it's a fantasy, and it's based off of Mayan mythology and like Mayan culture. Let's give this a shot. I will say this is a 5-star prediction for me. So please don't let me down. Hi guys. So my camera has broken, which is fun. So I'm filming through my phone. I'm just gonna have to be through my phone for the rest of this video, unfortunately. But I have made it about 100 pages in, more specifically 94 pages. So thought I'd update you, tell you what the book is about right now. Hello. So we have our main character, Cassiopeia. I feel like this book is a mixture of like Cinderella and Aladdin with adventure. We have Cassiopeia, who's treated pretty much like a servant, even though she is like a cousin of this family. They are very mean to her, very cruel. And this also takes place in the 20s, which I was not expecting, but I love the 20s. I love reading about the 20s. So that's a fun backdrop to the story. But she finds and awakens one of the gods of death, and she has to go on this mission with him to kind of help bring him back to power. If she doesn't, she dies. and he promises like her riches and a happy life when she's done helping him. But of course, there's people that are not wanting this to happen and are trying to stop it from happening. We get a bunch of different perspectives, which I actually very much enjoy. I also am sensing a little bit of a romance. I'm not sure with who yet, because I think it's going to be with the god of death, but I don't know how he's feeling, if he's feeling the romance feelings as well. But then I've also started feeling like romance feelings from her cousin Martin, which I am not here for. He's also just a walking red flag, and he needs to die. That's pretty much all I've gotten so far. They've pretty much where I've left off. They have started their journey in this other world, trying to find basically his body parts. Yeah. Once he has all of his body parts, I guess he comes back to power. I'm not quite sure what that means. Do we want that to happen? Do we not? I don't know, but we'll keep reading and find out. Hi. So I got a new camera while my old camera is being fixed. It may take a month, but in the meantime, I've got this new camera. We'll see how this one works out. I have made it almost to the 200-page mark with this one, and I'm really enjoying this story a lot. It's just like a very fun adventure, and there's lots of, there's a lot of dynamics going on here, and like a lot of things are at stake. I know I had mentioned something about like Martin possibly being interested in his cousin. I don't think he is. There's like a part of me that like still thinks maybe, but like it's more so I think he just wants to control her. He's a very toxic human being. I don't like Martin. But at least like reading from his perspective is interesting. And it doesn't make me completely want to throw the book. But Vucub Kame is the like god of the dead who's in charge right now. He's the like younger twin brother of Hun Kame, who is with our main character Cassiopeia, trying to get his godhood back and become the ruler of Sibelba again. But like even Vucub Kame, like his stuff is also super interesting. Like everything is just really interesting. And it's a very fun adventure. And I think we're like really gearing up for a good climax. And I like our main character. She is very much like, she's really like grown up being so used to not standing up for herself. And like seeing her slowly start to like stand up for herself and just, you know, say no to a god sometimes makes me very proud of her. But I do kind of see a romance forming between Hun Kame and Cassiopeia, and I like it, but he is like thousands of years old, and she I think is like 16, so, but it's cute. They're not focusing a whole lot on the romance, which is nice, because this really is more of like an adventure story, and my update really is just that I'm enjoying it still, so we'll see how the ending goes. Hello. This is also kind of editing Ellen here. I've just kind of gone through and edited a bunch of the clips, and when I was filming with this new camera for a bit, some of the clips I filmed happened to be filmed in slow-mo with no audio, which was very frustrating. So unfortunately, the next 3 clips that I had filmed were in that format. And so I've gone through and I've read my lips to the best of my ability and tried to remember what I was saying within those videos on my thoughts on this book. So in those clips, I was at like the 280-page mark, and then I had finished the book and gave you my thoughts at the very end. But within the clips where I was 280 pages in, I was pretty close to the end. Let me show you where that was. That was about right here. I had this much left. And so my thoughts, again, I had to write them down. I had no idea where the story was going, but I was absolutely loving it. And all of the characters are very interesting, very layered. At this point, I don't really know who to trust. Like, I know we have an antagonist, but there are moments where it's like, are we on the right side? Because like he's actually offering her what she really wants, rather than Hankame, who can't offer her this for her. But that's Vukapkame. Can we actually trust that he will do what he says he's offering? Well, the romance is nice, but then he says things that are like, come on, dude, really? Why you gotta ruin the moment? But I also like Hunkame's journey because as he's trying to get like his different body parts so he can become a god again, but like the longer that our two main characters, Cassiopeia and Hankame, the longer that they're attached to each other, the more human he becomes and starts to experience human emotions. And I think the more time he spends with her, the more time he spends not being a god, and he's becoming more of a nice person, which is nice to see. But then it's like, if he becomes a god again, what will happen to our main character's life? What will happen to Cassiopeia? Like, he can't go back to having those human emotions and probably not being nice to her. And it's just so complicated, but I'm loving it, and I want to see how this is going to work out. And then I cut to a second clip where I was like, wait, there was more I wanted to say. I forgot. And this one was more about the brother relationship between Hankame and Vukapkame, because we're never in Hunkame's point of view, we're never in his head, but we are in Vukapkame's head. And Vukapkame is, I can't remember if I've mentioned it, but he is the brother of Hankame, and he's the one who like tried to kill Hankame and is now in charge of the underworld. And, you know, he's our antagonist. He's kind of evil. He's very manipulative. I say that a bunch, actually. It's very interesting because I do go back and forth, like, whose side do I want to be on? But Vukapkame is just so manipulative psychologically and emotionally, and we see him doing this with Martin. But, you know, we don't really care about Martin because he sucks. But when we're in his head, we see him playing everything out and making these manipulation choices and, like, why he's doing this. It doesn't mean we're, like, on his side, but we understand. But then that makes me think, because Hankame is brothers with him, and, you know, he's also a god, and like they're both identically aligned. Like, are they identically aligned in their thoughts on the world? But because we're not in Hankame's head and he's slowly not becoming a god anymore, it's like, if he becomes a god, will he then become like Vukapkame? That's kind of where my thoughts were going. Yeah, because like when we're just seeing Hankame be charming sometimes, but it's making me think that, is he actually being emotionally tethered to these people, or is he also just being manipulative like his brother? Those are my thoughts. And then we get to the last clip where I had finished this book, and I'm a little teary-eyed, you guys, because this book made me cry. This book made me cry. Not sob, but like I had a few tears going down my cheek. And how I describe my thoughts on this book with you, I went through my rating system, which is the Cawpile rating system. So if we start with C, we are talking about characters. I gave characters an 8 because our 4 main characters, I'm calling them the main characters because they're the 4 that we're mainly going on this journey with, but it's Cassiopeia, Hankame, Vukapkame, and Martin. I thought they were very interesting, very layered. I really liked their characters a lot, but the side characters, they were hard for me to distinguish from one another. Like, they would mention a character, like one of the side characters, and I would be like, I can't remember who that one is. I can't remember what they did, how we know that person. Next was Atmosphere, which I gave a 6. I was very upset to give that a 6, because it was fine, but the fact that we were in the 20s, but it never felt like the 20s. Like, I kept having to be reminded that we were in the 20s. It was like, oh, that girl with the short hair, because that's the hairdo nowadays. And it's like, oh, right, flappers, we're in the 20s. I forgot. It was like, I had to keep being reminded. But then I gave the writing a 10. I don't know why, but I was like able to distinguish the difference between describing the atmosphere and the actual writing style, because the writing style was absolutely impeccable. This was like my favorite. I think this and The Beautiful Ones were my favorite writing style of hers. For the plot, I gave a 9. Pacing was good. There were a couple times where like things were repeated, but other than that, the plot was like super interesting, and the reveals were great. It was unique. It left me wanting more. You know, plot was great. Next was Intrigue, which I also gave a 9. It lost me a little in the beginning, but overall was very intrigued with the whole story. Logic, I gave a 9. This, I couldn't remember why I gave a 9, because as I was watching the clip, I was covering my mouth as I was talking about my thoughts on the logic of this book. so I couldn't read my lips. But I gave it a 9. Thought it was great. And then my enjoyment was a 10 because I absolutely loved this book, and it overall came to a 4.5 star rating. And because it's a 4.5, I do consider this also a win because it's close enough to a 5 that I can kind of count this as like this is what I was kind of looking for from her. And then I mentioned this in the beginning of the clip as well as the end of the clip, and I feel like I need to mention it because it'll make sense with the beginning of the next clip that's coming. But I mentioned that I was filming this clip right before playing D&D because I had to tell my cousins, I was like, listen, I'm gonna be late to D&D because I gotta finish this book and film a clip of me talking about it. And so then I was like, okay, I'll come back to you about the next book I'm going to read once I finish playing D&D. Okay, now that D&D is over, I can tell you about the next book that I'm going to read, which was going to be Silver Nitrate, the last book of this vlog, but then I was at the bookstore recently, and I found this. This is called Signal to Noise. It's by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. Did not realize she had another book. It looks like this came out in 2015, but it's been recently republished, which is why I didn't know about it before. So I was like, well, now that I've seen it, I have to add it to the video, which just means this video is going to be even longer, and it's going to take longer to make this video than I wanted it to take. But that's okay. All I know about this is just the first sentence up here is that it takes place in Mexico City in the 1980s. This was just like sitting on a table, but it was like a table near the fantasy section, so I'm thinking it might be fantasy, or like it has like light fantasy elements to it. But other than that, I don't really know anything about this, so that is it. I am now going to go do laundry. Okay guys, we've made it to the 100-page mark. Technically 103-page mark. This is like a fantasy historical fiction, but it is quite light on the fantasy. So this, I'm liking this. I've noticed, I think it's her fantasies that I tend to really like. Okay, so this does take place in it takes place in 1988 as well as 2009. Sorry, I keep looking over here because this is where the screen is. I'm used to the screen being up there. Okay, let me look at you. So it takes place in both 1988 and 2009. We go back and forth between the two different time periods. 1988 is when our main character Meche is in high school, and she has her 2 friends, Daniela and Sebastian, and they are like the losers of school. They're the losers. They're the dorks. No one really likes them, and they have found a way to use magic through music. And then we also are in 2009 when she's an adult and she has to go back to her hometown because her dad has passed and they're dealing with the funeral and all of that stuff. And she is kind of like reuniting with Sebastian and Daniela, but it seems like something happened that tore them apart, so they don't really talk much anymore or really like each other much anymore. I don't know yet. She hasn't really interacted with them, but like from her thoughts, it's definitely like something went down. Yeah, so it's definitely super interesting and I'm really enjoying it. I think the writing, the writing is good, but I think the pacing is just a little too slow. Like I feel like we're like 100 pages and I'm like, this could have all been like 50 pages. Like where I left off, we just finally figured out about the magic part of the story. And I'm just, we could have gotten there so much sooner. I don't know. I just feel like a lot of things are being dragged out. So that's my like one concern. But otherwise, the story, fascinating. I am loving the characters. I'm really enjoying this story. And I will get back to you when I'm 200 pages in, and we'll see if the pacing has gotten better. Hi guys. I've made it to the 200-page mark, and I got my camera back. For some reason, reading these books is taking me a very long time. I thought I was out of my reading slump, but maybe I'm not. Anyway, 200-page mark is about halfway, and I'm okay. I'm enjoying it, but I also feel like nothing is happening. It's either nothing is happening or it's just incredibly slowly paced and it's bugging me. But no, I really do feel like nothing is happening. And the magic too is not what I was expecting. Like I was expecting, you know, magic. But this is like they just listened to an album, stand in a circle, and then the next day something related to that song happens. It's more of like a lot of coincidences than magic, if you know what I mean. I don't know. It's not feeling how I was feeling in the beginning when I was reading this. Also, I think I'm more interested in the 2009 segments than the 1988 segments. But they're focusing more on the 1988 segments. So I'm still like interested in the story and in these characters and like what happened that tore them apart. I'm kind of getting a sense of it now. But other than that, I'm just a little bored. And that is my update. My next clip will be on my camera that I got back because this is my favorite camera. I love this camera. All right, my trusty, dusty, I don't know why I said dusty, but my trusty G7X is back. I'm so happy. I've made it very close to the 300 page mark in this book, which means I'm almost done. That's still just okay to me. I don't know if I have anything more to add, because I can't remember what I said before. It's actually been a couple of days. I'm reading this very slowly. I feel myself getting back into a reading slump, and it's frustrating. The romance I was expecting, but I will say I'm not sure how it's going to end. And it is still, like, interesting of a story, but I was expecting, I don't know, the magic to me to be a bigger part of the story. But it's more focused on the character relationships, which I do like. But I don't know. We'll see how it ends. But right now, I'm just like kind of like so-so about it. Like, I'm not really as invested in this as I was with some of her other books. But I'm also not like hating it. Hi, I have finally finished this book. It has taken me 20 days to read this book. I'm upset about it. I honestly feel like I'm back in a reading slump. I don't think it's because of this book. I think it's just because I've been hanging out with people more. And I've been focusing more on like movies and TV shows. But I finally finished this book. And I'm giving it 3.5 stars. I liked it. But our main character, I really couldn't get behind her. A lot of like the decisions she was making. It was like I understand, but at the same time, this is definitely the wrong decision. And I found her very overdramatic and just kind of like pissed me off a lot. And I didn't really care about the romance. I didn't really care much about the plot. But I did enjoy the magic system, even though I think it took a while getting there. And I definitely think this book was a little too long. But overall, I think I enjoyed it, but it's just definitely not a favorite. So, time to put that down. And now finally we can get to the last book, which is Silver Nitrate. I'm very excited. I don't know anything about it, except I think it's a horror. It takes place in the 90s. Yes, in the 90s in like the film industry. A very tired Ellen come to you to talk about Silver Nitrate. I am now officially 100 pages into the book. Okay. I don't even know where to begin. So let's start with what the book's about. So it takes place in the 90s, which I think I said before. But I will say it doesn't feel like the 90s. For some reason it feels like it's the 60s or the 70s. But it's the 90s, and we have our two main characters. Well, we typically have like three main characters, but our two main characters. Montserrat, which I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but that's the spelling pronunciation I see. And what's his? Oh, and Tristan. They're friends. They've been friends since childhood. He's like a washed-up actor. She is a sound editor, but of course she's like the only woman in sound editing, and it's not going well. They're trying to like push her out of the company. But then Tristan moves into a new apartment, finds out that one of his neighbors is a director named Abel, and who also did a lot of cult horror films that Montserrat is a huge fan of. They meet, they discuss, and she knows about this film that he did that was unfinished, and then no one ever heard about it again. But he starts telling the story about this unfinished movie and how it involves like a Nazi occultist and like magic spells and runes and all this like stuff that went down behind the scenes. And of course she's loving it. But then he's like, I want you to finish it. So basically she's hired to finish this movie. But where I left off, some crazy stuff is now happening. First, it started off, it was like good stuff was happening. It's like, yay, okay, the magic's working. But you know, we've got some scary stuff going down. I'm enjoying it now, but it was a lot of exposition in the beginning that it was almost kind of boring. It took me about like 80 pages in to finally get into the story. And now I'm just a little creeped out with what's just happened. Otherwise, I am enjoying it. So we'll see how the rest of the story goes. Okay guys, 200 pages into this book, Silver Nitrate. But first, I got a present, and this now needs to be in the background of all of my videos. It says Ellen's Reading Corner, and like it looks like me. And then on the bottom it says, a room without books is like a body without a soul. Like, how cute is this poster? But back to this book. Okay. 200 pages in, or technically, what is it? 208 pages in. I'm enjoying it. I don't think it's a favorite, but I am enjoying it. And some crazy stuff has been going on, but it's not really scary. Just that, like, first scary thing that happened was scary. After that, I'm like, okay, we can handle these scares now. But it's now incredibly interesting. The only issue I really have with it is the magic system is very confusing. And I don't quite understand it. And we're supposed to be learning about it as our character is learning about it. I don't know. There's things with runes. There's things with elements. And I'm also still quite confused how they make a spell with film. I don't know. They're like explaining it, but I'm not getting it. It's not clicking. That's my issue. Other than that, I am really enjoying the atmosphere. I'm enjoying the characters. Something different with this book, though, compared to her other books, there's no romance. At least none. Maybe, I don't know, towards the end there'll be some. But yeah, it's just our two main characters, Tristan and Montserrat, are just, they're friends. Longtime friends. She did have a crush on him in like elementary school, but other than that, it's literally just friendship love, and I love that. Granted, I do love my romance as well, so I won't be mad. Why did I sound like a British person? I won't be mad if there's a romance. If it turns out to be a romance. I finished it, and I enjoyed this one. I think it started off very slow paced for my opinion, with just a lot of exposition, but it really ended well. Overall, I'm giving this 4 stars. Just a few more thoughts after the ending of the book. I think I said before, I really like the characters. I think what I like about the characters the most is I like their journey, their arc from beginning to end, and just like their development. I think that's the word I'm looking for. I think it was a nice, like, natural development, and I think the things that they did within the story really felt like what their character would do. And yeah, no, I enjoyed reading from both Montserrat's and Tristan's point of views. The other thing I liked was the atmosphere. It was kind of like creepy, but because it took place in the 90s and we're dealing with like film and more of like the 50s era of film, it felt very like almost like pulpy and like a gritty vibe to it. The issues I think I had were, again, it was very slow paced in the beginning, and some parts, not just in the beginning, but also in like the middle and end, I felt were a little overwritten. But other than that, I really quite enjoyed this book. Now let's cut to an Ellen that will end this vlog and rank all of these books for you. Here are all the books I read in this vlog, and they're in order from my least favorite to my favorite. And at the bottom I've got Untamed Shore, and then The Daughter of Dr. Moreau, Signal to Noise, Silver Nitrate, Gods of Jade and Shadow, and then The Beautiful Ones being my favorite the 5-star, we found it. I did have a really fun time making this video. It did take a lot longer than I wanted it to, but I'm so happy to have kind of found, I think, my niche with Silvia Moreno-Garcia and her books. I tend to really enjoy her fantasies, I've noticed, and not so much her thrillers. I definitely will be picking up more from her later on. I think she's still an auto-buy author for me, but I think I now know what exactly about her stories I like and what I don't like. And I think that experiment that I've done for myself has worked. I do also want to show you with the other 3 books of hers I've read where they fall on the ranking as well. Here they are, but Beautiful Ones is still my absolute favorite. Highly recommend it. And that is going to be it for this video. I will see you guys later with more videos. Bye!